SDG Action Zone, how are you doing? Awesome. It is awesome that it's Friday, and I know none of us have slept at all, and you're still so hyped. That's what we like to hear. In here and out there in the live stream audience, we want you to keep the conversation going with the hashtags Act4SDGs, 4People, 4Planet, and SDG Action Zone, because we are trying to bring the world to the UN and bring the UN to the world. With that in mind, we have coming up next another UN Digest. These are sort of insider talks from senior level representatives from throughout the UN system, and they're an amazing insight into what actually happens here for those of us who don't always get to have those conversations. And I am especially excited about our next speaker because I also started my UN week with him at the Youth Climate Summit, for which he was a co-host, and now I'm getting to end the week with him once again. This is a person who has literally, as he put it, for too many years been involved in global negotiations on all sorts of subjects. Disarmament and human rights and climate is the one that really matters at this exact moment, and I'll tell you why. It's because he is the Secretary General's Special Envoy to the 2019 Climate Summit. So please welcome to the stage for the UN Digest of this moment, because we've had how many today? 3 or 4. Luis Alfonso de Alba.
Good afternoon to all of you. Let me start by highlighting that I hope that you will join me in welcoming the results of the Climate Action Summit. And I want to be very clear, I'm very satisfied with the result, even though I know much more needs to be done. But I'm very satisfied because we were able to get a group of leaders, high-level participation, but also many other stakeholders on a stage, on a single stage. We had representatives of civil society, representatives of businessmen, youth that contribute very, very much to the success of the summit, indigenous peoples, etc. It was a very high level and very inclusive summit. It has been a summit on which we have asked everybody to come with plans, not with the speeches. And we asked them even to describe their plans before coming so that we could select the most ambitious plans to be presented at the summit. It has been a success also because there is a greater recognition of the emergency we are facing and the need to act, to be concrete. It has been an opportunity for many actors to come with concrete proposals, whether we are talking about the industry, whether we are talking about the cities, the nature. Certainly, we have paid a lot of attention not only to reducing emissions, but also to dealing with resilience and adaptation, which is a very important topic, especially for the least developed countries, the seeds, and I would say every country, because every country is facing increasingly the effects of hurricanes and natural disasters. It was also very important and very successful meeting in as much as it is an opportunity to launch what I would call kind of a roadmap to be able to get to the point we need by the end of next year. And I'm referring particularly to the commitments that all member states need to make to come next year with enhanced national determined contribution. That means the formal plans, the formal contribution of member states so that we can be on track. As you probably know, what we have today in terms of the commitments will still get us to a trajectory of at least 3 degrees increase in the coming century, and that would be a disaster. We need to maintain the increase in the temperature below 1.5 degrees, and to do that, we need to multiply what we are doing today. And that needs to be formally tabled, formally registered next year. If we add the contribution of all the stakeholders that I mentioned, I'm confident that we can get back on track. Another characteristic of this summit, which I think it is very important to highlight, is the fact that this is the beginning of a process on which the United Nations as a family has committed to do a follow-up. It's not just an occasion on which everybody came and present ideas and plans and then we wait. No. This time we will not be waiting. We will be doing the follow-up of each of the initiatives that has been introduced. We will keep putting pressure on all the member states to do as much as they can, and certainly we will need to focus on the major emitters and those that may become major emitters in the near future if they do not change their trajectories. It is quite important that we use the good offices of the Secretary General and all the UN family to do this process, or to speed up and encourage action, but also to support the action, that especially when it comes to developing countries, that they not only identify the solutions that are available, but they have the necessary financial and technical support that they may require to translate those projects into concrete actions. It is going to be a very strict follow-up, and certainly we will be in a position, we hope to be in a position to report progress on the outcome of the summit. As soon as we get to Santiago, the Secretary General has already announced that he will be participating at that meeting and reporting. And from there, we need to look into what needs to be done in 2020. There are a number of events which are important. We need to make the linkage very clearly with other SDGs objectives, with other conventions on the climate and environmental field. And we need, obviously, also to be aware that if we do not get to the necessary level of ambition that is required, additional efforts will need to be done because there is no plan B, because there is no options. We need to do it. Let me just end highlighting how important is to be aware that climate is one of the 17 SDGs. It's not a separate agenda. It's not a conflicting agenda. Fighting poverty, getting better health, etc., is also part of the agenda on the climate change. We cannot and we should not accept that there are 2, 3 agendas for development. There is only one. And in that sense, one of the elements of the summit, which is also very important, is the recognition that there is a transition that would be needed, that we need to look into the questions of the rights of workers and the health of the people, and not to impose taxes on them, but to do it in a way in which we will certainly focus on the major, those that contaminate, those that need to pay the price or the biggest price. And we need to continue to look for a decarbonized economy that will bring benefits to the people, because every effort has to be centered on the well-being of humanity. Thank you very much for your attention.
For a little bit and chat a little more.
Sure.
We've been talking a lot about action because it's been a super week for the SDGs, but we're also kicking off the decade of action. And so as we move forward specifically on climate, but as you said, across the entire 2030 agenda, what can people in the room and out there actually do to support this agenda, practically speaking? What are the actions they need to be taking right now?
Well, I think that on a daily basis, there are many things that can be done, because we are moving into a more sustainable way of consuming and producing. And you can start by taking a shower that will last less, and the way you use transportation to work, to use public transportation. Those are small actions that you can take to have less waste, etc. But you can also act very decisively by identifying collectively actions that can be developed at the level of local communities, at the level of regional governments, and keep the pressure on all those that need to act. All those are governments and private sector, other stakeholders. It is a joint effort that is needed.
but keep the pressure on. This is not a kumbaya kind of movement. It is a keep the pressure on kind of movement. And all those partners you named are making attempts, but as we think about actually achieving the 2030 agenda, and specifically on climate, how do we actually hold them accountable? How do we not just keep the pressure on, but establish a way to achieve some of these goals rather than talk about them?
Well, as I mentioned before, one of the commitments is to do the follow-up of all the initiatives that we have got presented or were presented during the weekend and on Monday, not only Monday. And we will do it in a very transparent way, because we will do it using the tools available to us, especially internet, on which you will be able to see every single initiative, those that have committed to follow that action or to implement actions, and the progress or lack of progress on each of them. And everybody would be able to add some commitments to that program. They would also be able to join initiatives that have been identified through this platform.
One of the conversations we've had all week is that the climate discussion is not always as inclusive as it should be, particularly when it comes to those communities who are often the poorest but also the most affected. And so how are we making sure that when it comes to those metrics and all the things the goals that we're setting, that those folks have a voice at the table?
Well, we need to rely on all those who have participated during this week to send back the message to their communities. And we need them to be aware of the tools. I was mentioning internet, but in some cases internet may not be available, and they can still contribute if they get organized. And the youth movement has shown us how easy they have gone to the millions, how easy they have reached to 150, 160 countries on which they have already organized movement. That proves that it is possible to get organized.
So the youth showed you that it's possible to get organized. You heard that here at the United Nations.
It is a wonderful example.
You can clap for that.
We couldn't have done it without the youth.
That is a big statement. And I have to just ask lastly, how will you know that we're actually making progress? As you look to next year, to the kickoff of the Decade of Action, to the UN at 75 in 2020, what is the personal metric for you that you'll say, okay, we're on the right track and it's going to happen?
Well, let me first of all share with you a feeling which is quite general, but I've been in this many years, as you mentioned, and especially on climate. I was involved in negotiations 10 years ago, and I can tell you I have never seen the level of enthusiasm with this agenda, because the gravity of the situation is much more understood or
comprehended
today. And that's probably the best guarantee we have that the agenda will translate into concrete action. With tools like the platform I was mentioning, and with periodic review, SDG by SDG, and particularly commitment by commitment or pledge by pledge, we will be able to do it. This is no longer the time on which, as the Secretary General said before, we are hoping to listen to beautiful speeches, and then we go home. This is the time in which we need to have a very precise follow-up. And to give you an additional element, I will not measure the success of the summit as such until I see the results.
That's a commitment. That's a commitment. And it's important, I think, because it's so easy for us to send out press releases and talk about how well things went and not talk about the outcomes we're actually trying to achieve. So that is huge. But it's also huge to hear from somebody who has spent, I dare say, decades working on these issues, say that this is a moment that's like no other you've ever experienced. That has to mean something, right? Right? So with that, thank you to the Secretary General, Special Envoy to the Climate Summit 2019, Luis Alfonso de Alba.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And congratulations to you.
Oh, thank you. I deeply appreciate it. We really have been together all week.
Yes,